Pleasure to be with the now generation. I would say that if you look into the achievements of my generation and the generations that preceded me or preceded my generation, we have to admit that we have not done a good job in terms of making public finances sustainable, resilient, and an instrument to propel Africa's growth and development. And the reason is very simple to explain. We haven't been able to change the colonial model. And this is not an ideological posture. This is the evidence that we can derive from 80% of the countries in the continent being dependent on commodities, and the commodities being the driver of all the infrastructure that we have been able to put in place, which means that basically we continue to extract and export. That's all. We don't do value addition enough. We don't create employment enough. We don't formalize our transactions enough. And as a result, we have public finances that basically reflect the same as we used to have during the colonial period.
I often worry when we frame Africa as generally as we are victims of the West or China or UAE. And sometimes that sort of helps us evade accountability. Where do we draw the line between, ensuring that we get what is due to us and that the Western world, when giving us, when lending to us, is actually more favorable to us? But when do we begin asking African leaders as tough questions? Where is this money going to? Are we accounting to the citizens themselves when it comes to getting into these contracts? A lot of these contracts are signed without the knowledge of Africans. We don't know what our governments are getting into, and then we are told it is for our good. It turns out it is not. How do we begin holding African leaders accountable?
Yes, sir. I agree with you that countries need capital in order to modernize and industrialize, do all this transformation that you've been talking about. And let me show you a news that it's headlines today in Angola. Yesterday, the state attorney, the general attorney, said that Angola lost in the last 3 years $100 billion to illicit capital flight. So how's that possible? To me, don't you think that international financial architecture is rigged against African countries? Because we know that inside we have our own corrupt leadership. But someone makes it too easy to transfer and move money around. Don't you think so?
I absolutely think so. I was vice chair of the International Commission on Illicit Financial Flows from Africa. And, this reality is really very painful because, if you look into Panama Papers, Pandora Papers, all these revelations that come, you realize how easy it is. You put it very rightly, how easy it is to establish screen filters that wouldn't allow people to know how the capital is flying.
You touched on quite a few of the points that I was actually going to ask about. And just adding on to that, there's also an element of political will here, right? Because when you look at some of the issues and some of the gaps in the public finance space, it almost feels like there's a lot of low-hanging fruits that needs to be addressed. So the fact that there's about $9.6 billion of tax evasion, and the fact that we continuously always talk about introducing some kind of FDI tax incentives, and yet a survey is saying that almost everyone that invests in Africa don't actually invest for the taxes. What's wrong there? Why are the policymakers putting into place policies that actually seems to not really be attracting FDI, but in actual fact is just hurting the continent?
I want to go back to the point you raised earlier about ambitious leadership. You mentioned a number of mega trends from demographic to technology and climate change. I'll probably even add urbanization to that list. But I want to zero in on technology and young people in that sense. I mean, we're seeing an increasing trend, so to speak, in young people building solutions. But broadly speaking, the internet economy could contribute as much as 8% to the continent's GDP by 2050. My question to you is, and this has implications, by the way, on our tax base, it has implications on infrastructure and industrialization as you described it. My question to you is, what would be your advice to, say, the president of Nigeria or Kenya, where we're seeing, or any country for that matter, where we're seeing increasing trends in young people leveraging technology growth? How do we capitalize on this, and how do we ensure that it's not the same old story where these solutions don't, or like these innovations don't thrive? Thank you.
Thank you all so much. We have so many more questions from our online audience. We just didn't get enough time to get around to everyone, but I think that's a testament to you, Professor Lopes. Everyone would like to see you again, and I'm sure us and our network would love to have an opportunity to delve deeper next time. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll see you next month. Thanks very much. Bye.